I wanted to write a standalone. I wanted to write a first-person book with one character's perspective. It's too bad for me. This is the week that everything changed about this book. I feel like I didn't hardly write at all, but somehow I can see it so much clearer. So I'm very excited to tell you about week 3 of Let's Make a Book Baby, where I am taking you along the journey of making my entire book from start to finish, writing to publishing. This week, Marcus has entered the chat. Ari's love interest in this story was going to be Marcus. Now they are both here. And I'm wondering actually if Marcus needs to have the first chapter. Let me explain. Throughout editing and publishing multiple books now, I have noticed that I have a pattern, and I think this is maybe something that happens to other writers. I don't know. So I thought I would share it with you, where I have realized that I sometimes decide to leave out the most interesting part of my stories that I have already vividly thought through every single step about. So it's not like it's like, oh, like I didn't think about this. It's like I literally was like,
oh, no one cares.
and then my editor will come and be like, what about this? I'm like, oh, actually, here's this lore. And she's like, wait, that's like actually really interesting. Like, I really want to know about that. So now, after having the experience of writing multiple books, it's becoming easier and easier for me to catch that sooner and sooner. I'm sure there's still going to be something, and I'm going to have to add a chapter or two. But introducing Marcus into this now has unleashed all these opportunities in my mind and reminded me of all the cool things I wanted to share about this book. So, quick recap. This is a werewolf romance story. So there are shapeshifters, there are lycans who can shapeshift into wolves at will, and Ari is a trans guy. He's also an Omega because this is an Omegaverse story. But something that I knew about Ari is that he is supposed to be a total badass and elusive but fearsome in a way because he's so strong, but he's not actively seeking to weird people out or freak them out or something. He just has aura. You know? And Marcus has a different type of aura where he's just totally chill and he thinks that everything can work out. These two have been childhood best friends but long distance, and they are in denial that they're fated mates. So when I realized at the end of last week, like very last day, last hour at night, that Marcus needed his own perspective, I was like, well, great, I guess I'm doing a dual perspective book because this is solving so many of the problems that are already arising. A very important part of books like this are the steamy scenes, and their relationship in terms of those steamy scenes was really hazy to me and not really making sense before. Honestly, I know that might sound like, okay, well, like anyone could be together, anyone could be attracted to each other. That's not what I'm talking about. So their personalities were just not seeming to align when I was trying to come up with like, okay, in the book it needs to have X amount of steamy scenes throughout it that I need to weave into the storyline, which is really funny and entertaining to me. Like, I find it really hilarious, honestly. Like, how do I make this important? Like, usually I make it very, very important where you can't remove it from the plot. Otherwise, it just feels like fluff, which can be fun still. So maybe the purpose is fun, but I like to have it have a reason. So either the characters are developing through that, or it's somehow crucial and a turning point in the plot itself. When I was thinking this through, I was like, okay, I can see Marcus being, once they're finally together in the book, that he's like, oh my god, what do I do? Because he just adores Ari so much. And once I started thinking about that, I could just see him so much clearer. And I was like, there's no other way to describe this in the way that Marcus would describe it without having us be in his head. Because on the outside, he is very chill, and I think it can be fun to unravel a character like that from the outside. But with this, it's turning out to be way more fun to see the two of them coming together to understand one another better and themselves at the same time, which was my original intention with this book and what actually excited me about it. So I started mentally rehauling it and figuring out like, okay, this is the A plot, their relationship, how they're going to come together in this way, and basically stopping in denial that they're meant to be together. And somehow this kind kind of removed what I wasn't realizing was like in the back of my head as I've been making these videos. I forgot to tell you how much pressure I've been putting on myself to have an epic B plot. And if you don't know any of my other books, I'm gonna reference Soul Survivors and My Shy Alpha here because those have epic B plots. There's like the main relationship of the characters, then there's like wild like societal things happening that they have to solve because they're involved in it somehow. And then there's also like side characters who they're keeping secrets or some untold past history that we find out and it totally changes this. So like I love interwoven plots like that. And I realized where I was getting stuck with my ideas was because I was putting more pressure on myself for the B plots than I was with the A plots. And with romance, normally I don't feel like they have this much of a B plot line that's that like interwoven or like big. But I feel like I love writing like that and I wanted to write some type of epic storyline. It's just, I feel like I'm starting to finally let that go by week 3 of being like, okay, maybe it'll end up being epic, but I can have other places where the story is going to be epic in other parts of the plot line, like when they see each other in that example where Marcus sees Ari in person and he's like, oh, what do I do? I adore him so much. I don't know what to do. Like, I think that's a very cute moment and a standout moment that will make the book still feel like it has excitement in it without it having to be this big universal problem, which is like when there's some type of conflict that is bigger than just this individual character. So ironically, Marcus's perspective expanded on Ari and Ari's perspective definitely expands on Marcus, because I don't know if you remember this, but weeks 1 and 2 I just kept feeling like, okay, something is off. I feel like I'm over explaining something. Well, guess what? I don't have to explain as much when there's characters who are looking and thinking about Ari and they're like, oh, I know this person and this is what I think of them. That is showing us without that character just being like, I am shy or something, you know? I feel like that made me feel a lot better as well. So I'm very excited about this development and I wanted to share with you about it all week. So as I was writing Marcus's perspective, that introduced his whole circle. And previously I had written a little scene of an idea I had between the two of them. I don't know if I'll still use it, but in that scene I like pictured Marcus as having this Omega group chat. Like he's the only guy and then there's all these women who are just like, what are you doing? Like you need to just, you're in love with Ari. Like I just love that idea for some reason. But instead of like a texting group chat, it's a mind link group chat because werewolves can telepathically communicate. And I just think that's so funny. So like he has this Omega mind link group chat and they're all like trying to coach him through this because they just keep having some type of miscommunication. So I love the friend group, but once I realized like, oh my god, this is a miscommunication book, I was like, well shit, what do I do? Because if you haven't seen my least favorite tropes video that I did, that is one of my least favorite tropes. But I realized that it's my least favorite trope when it's thrown in to the relationship to cause chaos. So as I was thinking through Marcus's perspective, I was like, okay, this single chapter is literally changing everything about the book because Marcus, I just have to have him explain the actual situation from a reasonable standpoint because I feel like he has that level-headedness and chillness about him. Except it is to a fault because he's like, I'll just let Ari be. Even though he has big feelings about Ari, he's gonna just let him be free, basically, when really he should be a little more of like, okay, this is actually what I want. So the communication issues are not exactly the same as what I would call a miscommunication trope. Because in this chapter, near the beginning of the book, I was like, what if I have him tell his friend, one of the people in the Omega group chat, and she's like, you just need to go visit him for a month, because I was already going to have him go do that. And so by this conversation that they're having, they talk out the reasoning that is very much more logical than it might seem of why Marcus doesn't want to hurt Ari. So he's worried about basically ruining one of Ari's life dreams if he's not actually his fated mate. He's like, I don't want to take that away from him. So I'm like, oh, that's cute. It's sad. But by laying all that stuff out, it's revealing like, okay, this is a bigger issue. So it's strengthening the conflict and it's removing it from being a miscommunication trope, because then they come up with a plan of like, okay, you two need to try to work this out together, and here's the ways. He's like, I'm going to try to resolve this rather than just letting it be. And I feel like having that is something I haven't done before, but I feel like that kind of resolves my frustrations. Like if I imagine myself as a reader with that trope that I really do not like, and it changes what I would picture as a miscommunication trope. So I'm gonna see how that goes. I think that by reorienting it like that, it's working out really well. In that, I was like trying to introduce all these ideas, so switching back and forth from Ari and Marcus, just adding little pieces of what I've already written and preparing them to be in the same location together for a longer period of time throughout the rest of the book. And I was like, I never really gave the backstory about Ari being like this badass wolf. I was gonna have this whole thing where people don't know who this wolf is who like shows up, because in book 3 of the My Shy Alpha series, we see this really ridiculous gladiator competition that all the alpha pack leaders across the world put on. So Ari, his parents, have already broken a lot of gender norms. And with this, I mean werewolf gender norms too, because, spoiler, they end up realizing and coming out to themselves as like genderqueer, but werewolf version. So they're like bi-gender basically. And everyone else is like, what? Like anyone who like, seems like an Omega can't be strong or whatever, but Noah is like, he kind of has some gender fluidity between Alpha and Omega, which honestly I feel like is written throughout the whole series, but it's more of like confirmed, so that's more of a bigger spoiler, but something that I still like to mention because I think it ended up being nice representation in a way where it's like fantasy representation, but something that I still want to share and was planning throughout the whole series. I wanted Ari to expand on that, because if he goes to an Alpha Summit like that, I feel like 1, he wouldn't want to be in the spotlight, so he would show up basically as a shadow. 2, he would absolutely just crush everyone and then be like, haha, I'm an Omega, what are you gonna do about it? And then he'd leave. And so that was my idea for him all along, how I wanted to set up his character. I was like, well, duh, I should just have Marcus explain at the beginning of the book that that is what he's like. Like, that would lay out their backstory, their connection, and possibly some tension with other packs that Ari has now created, because normally they're supposed to be crowned as king, but he just disappears. So I wanted him to be like a shadow king. So like, he genuinely is that powerful, but he's not fulfilling the role yet that he wants to fulfill or that everyone else is expecting of him, and that's putting all that pressure on him. And I think that is the most exciting part of his character that I didn't yet show for some weird reason. And I've had that planned about him from the beginning. And so I caught it, and now I'm going to try to write it in week 4, because I didn't end up writing as much because it was a lot of planning, like brainstorming and thinking this through. I hope that was interesting for you. I feel like it's just all kind of coming together, and I can think of some greater conflicts now for the B plot without feeling like there's as much pressure. But I think I'm going to just keep writing and see what happens. So if you are also working on a project, make sure to update me down below, and to also just keep going even if you're having doubts or worries or concerns, because sometimes it is just those phases that you're like, oh, I just need to get to the other side, but I don't know how, like, is it even gonna work out? And usually that means you just need to keep going. So good luck. If you watch this long, I want to give you a little sneak peek. These are the sketches I drew of Ari. I just had him in my head and I really wanted to test out drawing him. He looks so much more sassy than I intended for him to be, so I'm very entertained by him. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you have not read the My Shy Alpha series yet, I have signed copies available. These are them. I have them in my possession and I can mail them to you. I usually pack them up all nicely with some paper and a little wax seal stamp, and then some stickers or other different goodies. I even made a little box set for the full series. They come signed and they can be personalized if you want, but I made these little boxes and I put them together and mail them to you so that you can store them on your shelf. So you can grab my books at riverkiteart.com along with a bunch of other stickers, bookmarks, and even even some spicy art prints. I am really looking forward to seeing how this next week goes, and I will see you next week. Goodbye for now. Okay.